Okay, so I'm starting with footwork on the reformer, and I have 3 red springs or 3 whole springs on. And I'm going to put my heels parallel position on the foot bar. So parallel heels, relaxing my shoulders into the shoulder rests, and my pelvis is in neutral and my ribs are relaxed on the reformer. And so I'm lifting my arms so you can see that I'm in neutral. You can see maybe a little bit of a tunnel under my lower back, under my lumbar spine. So I'm not pressing into imprint, and I'm not forcing a big tunnel there. So I'm pretty relaxed, letting my ribs be released into the reformer. And on the exhale, I press out, and inhale coming in. And then when I come out after a few, I sort of readjust to check my pelvis again. And lift and take a look at my heels and see how accurate my sense of parallel was. And then pressing out on the exhale and in on the inhale. And notice I can also draw my abdominals in with my transverse abdominis when I press out. And then pumping is just halfway out and almost all the way in. I don't want to bang into the reformer like that. So I'm just halfway out, and then I press all the way out, about 8 to 10 of those. And then I'm going to parallel toes. So I'm on the balls of my feet, bring my heels up nice and high. I'm not letting them roll out. I'm lining up so that I have most of my weight on maybe between my second and third toe-ish. Checking the parallel again, see if I'm lifting or if I'm relaxed into the reformer. And then if you can see my heels, notice that I slowly release my ankles so that when I come in, they're released down. So my heels actually are in a space hold. They're not raising or lowering, but I'm changing my musculature to keep them in the same place. And then small V, so I bring my heels together, pressing out, and I'm bringing the inner thighs toward each other, feeling a bit of rotation at the end or throughout, checking that neutral pelvis. And again, I can think of going into more releve or bringing my heels up as I come out, and then I gradually release them as I come in. Right? And I'm not doing the full number, but you can do 8 to 10 in each of these positions, just showing the pumping again. And I'm pressing all the way out. And then I'm coming in and going into open V on heels. So you can choose to be about 45 degrees, or you can choose to be really open wide. And I'm going to choose to be open wide here. And I'm checking into the pelvis, kind of relaxing, kind of move my pelvis around to kind of find it again. Remembering that neutral pelvis is a zone and not a position that I try and hold. And then here I am, open V heels, and I press out. Once I press out, you can kind of adjust. And notice you can flex your feet like this, or you can kind of have them nice and long. I prefer the nice and long, so I'm not overusing the front of my legs. And then I come in, and then I also like to think about dragging the heels toward each other as I press out, and that will help me emphasize my inner thighs a bit more, the backs of my legs a bit more, the kind of hip extension element, if I'm thinking of that dragging. And then if I don't want to do that, I can actually focus on the knee extension element. Pulses in that position. Then the last one is open V toes. I'll just do a few of those again. I'm on releve here, and then I keep my heels in a space hold. So if somebody put their fingers on my heels, I would have light pressure on their fingers all the way in and all the way out, but I wouldn't leave their fingers either. And then the calf raises, so I'm in parallel. I go ahead and check again. And I like to think about my toes like a bird on a wire. So I'm kind of prehensile and holding on with my toes when I'm in. And then when I press out, I kind of flare my toes. And I do a few of these, and I take it slow so I can really line up and feel where the weight is going, mostly between the second and third toe. Maybe think second toe if you tend to roll out. And then I often lift up to take one peek and rest back down, and then prances. Something really fun to think about with prances is when do you have that moment of transition? Like right here, so that sense of suspension, right? And the sense of suspension is not like through here, my ribs, but instead through my whole body. Also in prances, I like to think about an easy reach of the lowering heel. So between from this left inner heel all the way to my hip flexor, that my hip flexor gets longer here as I reach down. And I can kind of adjust so I can put more weight and release into that stretch. I take a tiny bounce sometimes, but there's not a lot of bounce, a lot of weight in this bounce. I'm kind of supporting with this other leg to kind of stretch out in calves. And then coming in, I'm going to switch the springs to red and a blue, so 1.5 springs for the single leg. So I'm just going down to half the springs that I have for the double leg. Oops. So I'm going to show it with both legs. So I have single leg heels. So you can be in tabletop, 90 degrees roughly at the hip joint and the knee joint. And I'm kind of finding that neutral pelvis. And just press out with one leg and find that long hip flexor. You can also extend 90 degrees, and I like to arrive when I come in with the knees coming together. And then you can also dive under. But this is also a nice coordination. Can I straighten both legs at the same time? And then I'm going to show single leg toes. I'm going to start up here. So I have 90 degrees of flexibility in my hamstring. You may not, and you may want to bend slightly because otherwise you might drop into imprint trying to lift your leg. I'm pointing my foot, not trying to crunch my toes necessarily, and I'm on the ball of my feet, my left foot. And I can dive under. I'm just showing this on the other leg. So you can see my left heel is fairly still in space. It's in its own space hold. And I'm lifting my arms so that you can see my pelvis, relatively steady, not rigid. And you could also do something with your arms here if you want to, if you like to actually coordinate them. That's up to you if you want to play with some choreography with your arms. Okay, so abdominal exercises on the reformer. I'm going to do the 100 prep. I'm going to do the 100, but maybe not all 100 of them. So I have a red and a blue spring on, or 1.5 springs. And I move about 1 inch away from the reformer so that my shoulders, the shoulder rests, so that my shoulders are not touching the shoulder rests. I like to have the headrest about half up so that my head has a little bit of support as I curl up. And this space between my shoulders and the shoulder rests is so that I can actually roll up without having to drag against the shoulder rests. And then I'm going to pull slightly on the strap so the reformer comes away from the stopper, and I have plenty of room to breathe here and let my pelvis and entire spine find neutral. And then I find my transverse abdominis drawing the abdominals in, and I'm able to support lifting into tabletop. And then I inhale to prepare. Exhale, slide my skull on the headrest and look toward my abdominals to come up. And then I inhale down and exhale up. And then I can inhale down, exhale up, and I can modify to let I call this lazy tabletop. So my knees are still above my hip joints, but I'm relaxing my ankles down. And then a variation is to straighten the legs out. Notice I'm staying in neutral, drawing my transverse abdominis in when I press out. Inhaling on the way in. And if your back feels a little unstable, you can go a little bit toward imprint. All right, here goes the 100. So inhale for 5 and exhale for 5. And I'm pulsing my arms when I do it. I like to think about going deeper with my transverse abdominis with every exhale, or with every pulse of the exhale. So I like to say, deep, deeper, 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 deepest. That's how I try to think about the abdominals coming in. Now I'm going to do coordination. So it starts with 100 prep, with the legs extending out, and then the legs open and close. Notice that I'm always looking at my abdominals. I'm looking at my navel every time I come up. It's really common to end up like this looking up, and that's really not so sustainable for the neck. I want to continue thinking of the curl forward. And that's different. That kind of, I like to talk about fruit roll-up of the skull and spine rather than snowplow. So I'll try to demonstrate that too. So when I'm here, it's like a fruit roll-up feeling that I could actually roll on myself instead of snowplow when I'm shoving forward. You can notice I can't even talk when I'm in snowplow. So now we're going to climb a tree on the reformer. I have the long box on, so the box is long ways here. And I have this foot strap that's attached around the reformer. We'll show you how to do that live. And I'm pretty close to the front of the box, but not necessarily on the edge. And I'm going to anchor this foot and bring this knee into my chest, and I'm sitting up in neutral. I'm not forcing my ribs forward. I'm just here in an easy neutral. I'm feeling that easy hip crease on my right hip. So I'm not forcing it. I can relax the muscles on the front of my hip joint so I don't bunch them up. And then I bring my leg up as high as is comfortable in this neutral place. Feel a nice stretch there. And then I tuck my tail, so my tail goes down first, and I walk my hands down, and I can feel this support of the strap that this foot is in, so I can release here and go back. I think traditionally it's taught here, but I like to open up. And then curl the skull. Draw the abdominals in, so the transverse abdominis supports me coming up. I give it another kind of pull, and then I bring it in. And I'll do it with the other leg so that you can see it. Can you see me on the video? I might be too high, but we'll see. So the other leg so you can see it from this view. I pull it a few times, bring it up, feel that stretch. I start to roll down. I'm tucking my tail to roll it through. Circling, curl. Right here where it gets challenging, transverse abdominis. Roll up, pulling in, bringing it in, feel the softness in the front of the hip joint. And that's it. Okay, so now I'm going to do the hip work with my feet in the straps. So I'm putting 2 red springs on. You can do this with a red and a blue also. I'm going to grab the straps and I press out and put one foot in the strap first so I can kind of feel my balance. And then the other foot. Kind of adjust, get comfortable. My feet are turned out, my hips are turned out, heels are together. And my teachers have often told me to imagine that there's an egg between my heels so that I can have that pressure but not gripping, but also you don't want to drop the egg. So it's that nice balance. And here, I am a neutral pelvis again. And what's really important here is that I feel that nice 45-degree angle. So I'm not too high and not too low. You're not dropping down too low. Neutral pelvis. And then I feel this neutral pelvis and I keep it as I raise and lower my legs just a few times. Just so I can kind of feel, how do I raise and lower? It's kind of a warm up or a prep or kind of something that you do before you start doing the full series with the hip work so that you can kind of just feel the control of the reformer moving. And I can feel my hamstrings are controlling this, the backs of my legs, so I don't feel like my back is and abdominals are forcing me to go up and down, even though that my abdominals are, the transverse abdominis is supporting here. And then when I press down, also I might actually feel that I want my ribs to kind of drop down a little bit. I'm not going to force it like that, but you want to make sure that as you lower your legs, your ribs don't pop up too much. So I'm here at 45 degrees. I like to rest my hands here so I can feel my pelvis, but you can also put them on your sides here. I like to flex my feet as I come into 90 degrees at the hip joint, 90 degrees at the knee joints, and I like to look at the distance between my knees and the ropes. So if I have one leg out too far, I can see if I'm uneven. It's a way to tell. My feet are flexed, my toes are back toward me. And then as I press out, I go heel, ball, toe to point the feet, to arrive at a pointed foot. And as I come in, I arrive at a fully flexed foot when I'm all the way in. Exhale on the way out. Inhale coming in. This is frog. And then I can do circles down, around and up. Circles down, around and up. And I have to control here so that when I go down, my ribs are quiet. And as I come around and up, I don't want to come too far this way or I'll lose my neutral pelvis or I'll have to force with my back muscles. So I need to control it as I come around and up. So I open, but I need to know when I'm going to close in order to keep control. And then I'm going to open to reverse it. And when I do these other circles, the circles reversed, I open my legs and I keep the carriage still. It's a nice practice to see if you can stabilize and still stay in your breath. I'm doing wider circles in this direction also. And then here, this is simply called openings. Opening and closing. And you can really work your rotation here if you want to. external rotation or lateral rotation in the hip joints. Noticing that I'm pointing my feet but not my toes so much. And then extended frog. This is really fun. I love this. So you frog in, and then you hold the carriage steady. You don't let the carriage move. You stabilize here as you open. And then the carriage moves in again when you close. So I frog, the carriage moves. I open my legs, carriage stays still. And then I close my legs, carriage moves. And then reverse that, extended frog reversed, where you open. And then here, carriage stays still. And then exhale, extend. So carriage moves as I open, carriage stays still as I transition into frog, and then carriage moves as I press that frog out. So that's the hip work on the reformer. Okay, I totally forgot Peter Pan. So Peter Pan's not in the book. Peter Pan I learned from this woman, Cynthia, that I worked for. I think she still has a studio on Balboa Island. I think it's Pilates Passion. And I learned Peter Pan from her. Still 2 red springs. So you just passe in one leg and let the other open, and then you can press out and switch. And it's also just a nice stretch, especially if you have people on either side of you. I can kind of move, I can kind of leave neutral a little bit. I get a little lazy here and enjoy the inner thigh stretch. Just kind of release. It's good. Peter Pan. It's a Peter Pan party. Okay, so now spinal articulation on the reformer. We're gonna have the foot bar up. You can play with the height of the foot bar on this one, and I have 2 red springs to start, and my pelvis is gonna come off of the carriage, and so it's really essential that I have the headrest down, because when the pelvis comes off, I don't want to force extra cervical flexion or flexion of my neck if I don't need to. So I'm here. Got my heels on the foot bar. I'm holding onto the carriage gently. And I'm gonna drop and relax into neutral. And then on the exhale, draw the transverse abdominis in and roll the pelvis up into this bridge. And I'm holding the carriage on the stopper here, and I'm using my hamstrings to do it. Notice that my pubic bone is higher than my ASIS, than my anterior superior iliac spine. And I want to keep it that way, or even emphasize that more. So as I press out, I'm thinking of my pubic bone coming even higher. And then I come in. And I don't need to press all the way out, because if you press all the way out, you'll notice your pelvis has to lower. You'll also notice it might go into your lower back. The other thing that's common is that people tend to lift up and through their chest, and it's not about that. It's really about my pelvis. So if I think of tucking as I press out, you're really going to feel it in your hamstrings and your glutes potentially. And you know, if I want more of a challenge, then I press out further, but as far out as I go, I have to keep lifting through my pelvis and tucking. You can try this on one leg, it's really challenging. And then from here, I'm gonna roll down one vertebra at a time on the stopper. So bottom lift is when I just roll up one vertebra at a time, holding the carriage on the stopper, and then roll down one vertebra at a time. And then bottom lift plus extension is the one I did first, where you press out. So the next one I'm going to show is semicircle. So this one's a bit more advanced. I'm going to put just one red on for semicircle. I'm going to do a red and a blue. You can play around again. You'll feel it, but it gets harder if there's fewer springs to press out because it's less stable and your hamstrings have to work more. But this one's a little bit different. Actually, sorry, I'm going to do one red, just one spring on this one. I'm remembering. So I have my feet in a small V on the foot bar, and then I have to lift my pelvis up and walk my shoulders out until my arms are straight, and I have the heels of my hands pressing because I don't want to hurt my wrists and pull my hands in too far. So I have the heels of my hands pressing on the shoulder rests, and my heels are together, small V on my feet. My knees aren't too wide, just about 45 degrees out. And then I press the carriage out 3/4. Don't straighten your legs. You actually need room to move your spine. And then I roll one vertebra at a time. You're going to roll off the reformer, and the reformer's actually not moving. And then my bottom touches the springs, and I slide in 3/4 of the way. And then I tuck my tail, and I roll up one vertebra at a time. And again, I press out 3/4 of the way. Now the carriage stays still here as I roll down one vertebra at a time. Carriage moves with my tail gently on the springs, and then I roll it up. And you can reverse this if you want to go the other way. I don't know if it says that in the book or not, but I like to go both ways. And this is such a wonderful moment that I get to feel here. Sometimes I pause here and feel that stretch in the upper back. So pressing out just 3/4. Remember, if your legs are straight, your pelvis kind of has nowhere to go. So I'm tucking my tail. I'm really feeling one vertebra at a time, tail first. Feeling my head at the end. And then I come in, again, 3/4. You don't want to come in all the way to the stopper. And then I feel the ribs, mid, back. I'm still tucking. And then I let my tail go at the very end. Then I slide it out. And last, I'm going to show you short spine and long spine. So for short spine, I do a red and a blue, or 1.5 springs. And there are 2 ways that short spine is taught. I'm going to show you both. Again, my pelvis is going to come off of the mat, so I have to have the headrest down for this. Really important safety note. So I put my feet in the straps. Again, neutral pelvis, arms down by my sides. Actually, I might lift this arm so you can see. I go neutral, neutral, neutral. I just see how much my hamstrings will let me do. And then eventually I leave neutral, right? And my tail will slowly start to peel off, but only when it needs to. And now I'm at the stopper. So I want to keep the carriage at the stopper, so I'm not pulling on the straps when I do this. Exhale, and I pretend I'm still rolling one vertebra at a time. I can press down with my arms a little bit if I need some help. Coming up, only as high as is comfortable. And then I'm frogging. I'm not squatting. I'm in a frog, right? And my knees aren't too wide. And here, I keep my knee and hip and ankle angles the same. And I roll through my spine. So the carriage, for every vertebra that I move through, the carriage is moving just a little bit. And then I get to neutral. And the whole time the carriage was moving. And here I'm in this nice neutral, and I'm just finished it out with a frog. So I'm going to do one more without speaking so you can see. And then the really fun challenge is long spine. So on long spine, I think they're both about long spine, really. I'm not sure why they call that short spine, but maybe you'll get it when you see this. So a long spine, I'm in parallel. I come to 90 degrees, or as far as I can go without my losing neutral. And then you don't want to go much further than 90 degrees because it gets harder. I'm going to roll up to shoulder stand without moving the carriage, or I'm going to try. So I roll one vertebra at a time. And then I keep the carriage still as I roll back down, one vertebra at a time. Drawing the transverse abdominis here inward. So the carriage moved a tiny bit, you might have been able to see. And then some people sort of make a circle through here to reset, to see where do I need to be? Where's that perfect spot so it's challenging? Roll up. I really feel my hamstrings here. They are what is preventing that carriage from moving. Oh, there's a little moment. So you have to have really smart hamstrings to do this. They're working in different ways on the way up and on the way down, and very steadily. So those are the spinal articulations on the reformer. How's my spine look? Good? All right. Okay. Okay. So hamstring stretches on the reformer, hamstring stretch standing lunge, hamstring stretch kneeling lunge, and hamstring stretch full lunge. I have one red spring. I'm going to put my front foot right here where the foot bar kind of meets the reformer. My back foot is on the shoulder rest, and I come into this lunge. My right hand is in the center of the foot bar, and my left hand is on the left-hand side of the foot bar. My hips are squared off here, and I'm feeling a little bit of a hip flexor stretch, but I'm not just hanging in that on my ligaments. I'm actually feeling an active stretch here, and my front foot is flat. And then when I'm ready, I can press out and flex that front foot. It may look like this would hurt the heel, but it doesn't, because I have a certain amount of weight in my arms and a lot of weight on my back leg. I'm not trying to pull my shoulders down too far, but I'm also not letting them get shoved up into the joints. So it's kind of a nice balance here. And I'm thinking of sending my left sit bone back, this sit bone back. And then I come back into the lunge. And then I press that out. Standing lunge. And then the kneeling lunge. Same thing, but here, up here on the reformer. So I have the ball of my front foot, and it's just to the left of center, so I have enough space for my hips. So I'm not trying to cross over here. And so I'm dropping my heel down. I'm here in this lunge again, and then I press back to straighten. And I can have this front foot really flexed, and that gets a different kind of stretch, but I'm thinking of the left sit bone going back rather than just dropping out. So coming in, pressing out. And I used to have a thing where I'd say, don't even let the carriage move, just send that left leg back and then press it out. So it's fun to play with the different initiations and the different alignments. It's also fun to just come out into the splits here. Kind of feel that. It's a different feeling than doing the splits on the ground for sure. I'm going to flex my front foot a little bit. Oh, it's deep stretch. And again, I'm not just hanging out. It's active. My whole body's engaged here. And not engaged where I'm gripping, but engaged where my whole body's awake and participating. So I'm going to say goodbye to you right now because I have to stand up, and you're not going to see my head, but you'll hear me because I have the mic. So starting, I have the back foot's about 3/4. So it's not in full forced arch like that, but it's not flexed either. So it's 3/4. My front foot is here. Actually, I'm going to switch feet. So the back foot's 3/4, not fully in forced arch necessarily. And I'm putting my right foot, because I want to show the other angle. And I'm here in a nice lunge. Again, I'm not hanging out, but I'm in this activated full body lunge. And then I can press it out, drop my head, sending my right sit bone back now. So whatever leg is in front, that's the sit bone that you want to send back. I can come into the bent knee, and then I can slide it back out. Drawing my transverse abdominis in a bit for support. And then this is the advanced version. So now I'm going to say goodbye because you won't see me in a minute. I'm going to come up and get my balance here, and I can press out. I can also come up to standing and slowly slide the reformer out. See how far down I can go in the splits, making my way back up. But I have to control. And then one more that I'm going to show you is reverse hamstring. So there's a full body integration called balance control front that I'm going to show you now, but I like to do it in combination with something I call reverse hamstring. I don't actually think this is an exercise that's not in the book, but you can see that it's the preparation for balance control front. So I'm going to do reverse hamstring, balance control front, and then I'm going to put the other foot down. So I have the headrest halfway up, and I'm going to put my foot there. I still have one red spring on. And I'm going to start here with my left leg so that you can see my open side first. So I put the ball of my left foot on the headrest, and the heel is just here on the carriage. My hands are going to be here on the shoulder rest. I don't want them too far back because, again, that's going to create too much pressure on my wrists. So I'm a bit more here, and you can kind of play with where you want your hands to be in terms of this little extra bar that's here. So I'm letting my head drop, and this is a little bit of a scary moment. Yeah, but once your ball of your back foot gets on this foot bar, it's really stable. So I'm here in a nice lunge, and I like to just press out. This is the things not in the book. I like to find a split here and then come in. And then there's also a way to find a split here. Then really drop your head and hang over here to feel that kind of stretch. And just play around here in this reverse hamstring. And then I have my shoulders at 90 degrees and I'm ready to press up into plank. Oh, I forgot to say that when you put your back foot back, you want it to be just a little bit to the right of center if your right foot is back. So I stabilize the reformer using my arms, and then I put my other foot back. And I draw my transverse abdominis in, and I lift my kidneys a bit to the ceiling, and then I pulse. And then I'm going to bring my other foot down, so now I'm bringing my right foot forward so that I can have this stretching experience on the other side. I can press out, I can play with this, I can come up, I can drop my head. Let my head hang, create a little rest here, press out into the split, bring myself back in. I love that series, it's one of my favorites, so I wanted to add that as a little bonus. So I call that a reverse hamstring. And then the thing that I did in the middle is a full body integration. So it's a different category, but it's called balance control front. Are you in control? Okay, full body integration 1. We're going to start with scooter. We're going to go into down stretch, then up stretch, then long stretch. Scooter is not everyone's favorite. At first people think it's boring, but there's a lot going on, and I think it's really complex and worth doing. So I have one red spring on. I'm going to put my front foot in the middle of the carriage, my right hand in the center of the foot bar, my left hand on the left-hand side of the foot bar. My back foot is on the shoulder rest, and my front knee is bent, and then I try to find neutral pelvis. Hips even, I'm not dropping one of my hips, they're nice and even. And I'm supported here. I'm not sticking my ribs out to find neutral. And then I press out. It's a very simple movement, but it's really complex to do. And I'm really trying to use the back of my leg, but both hamstrings and both glutes are working because this left leg that I'm stabilizing with has to work. And I can show you on the other side. It's a pretty good transition, huh? So now, kind of excited, never did like that before. So now I'm going to line up again and press out. Hip differentiation. So I'm able to really feel that it's not my pelvis doing this necessarily. I'm able to feel that my leg, my glute, they can all do their job. Their individual jobs together. So that's scooter. And next I'm going to do down stretch, which really feels like up stretch to me. I still have one red spring on. I like to put a little more weight on the pinky side of my hands and mostly on the heels of my hands, and I like to have my hands wide on the foot bar on this one. I also have a lot of support from underneath here, like in cobra in yoga or an upward dog in yoga. Also, I really like to play with different breath patterns on this one. So my spine is extended, and it challenges the front of my body a bit more. It's a core challenge. One of the great things about down stretch, I'm starting about 90 degrees here at my shoulder joint, is that you draw your transverse abdominis in and you really open up your hip flexors. So I come up, and I like to inhale on the way up. So that's down stretch. And then up stretch, I'm here, my feet are about 3/4 point, not quite forced arch. And again, I've got most of the weight on my the heels of my hands, because you don't want to drop down like this, because it's really hard on your wrists. You'll last a lot longer in the exercise if you're up here more. I could almost extend my fingers, and sometimes I do. So from here, you want to send your sits bones. I'm extending through the shoulder joints. You want to send your sits bones up and back so your pelvis can be in neutral. So you don't want to extend through your shoulder joints by dropping your rib cage like this. It's a habit. So people will drop in like this. So to find your lumbar curve, you integrate your rib cage and open your sits bones up and back. And then I draw my abdominals in at the beginning of the exhale and then pull the carriage in just a little bit. So transverse abdominis and then psoas. Deep hip flexors. And then you can see that I'm 90 degrees more or less at my hip joint. And then I'm going to exchange to 90 degrees at the shoulder joint. And then back up 90 degrees at my hip joint, extending the shoulders, and then extending at the hip joint, 90 degrees at the hip joint, or shoulder joint. So this is a long stretch prep, I would say. Because then long stretch is when you slide the carriage forward, trying to keep the integrity of your plank. How far forward can you go while keeping the integrity of your plank? And then you come up to upstretch. Coming down to plank. Drawing the I'm really transverse abdominis, drawing my belly in, and then keeping the carriage stable as I come up and back. And that's long stretch. So now my full body is integrated. How about yours? What's happening? I can't. What's happening? Oh my goodness, I'm caught up. So I'm going to do the arm series. I'm going to start with arm supine. I have a red and a blue spring. And supine is lying down. So I'm going to put my hands in the straps. And I have a little space between my shoulders and the shoulder rests here. And I'm going to pull just a little bit so that the carriage comes away from the stopper and I can feel my arms stabilized by that. And then I'm going to feel neutral spine. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to let my ribs rest into the mat. This preparation is everything so that you feel like you're in the right place before you start. And then I'm going to draw the transverse abdominis in to support the lifting of the legs off. So here I am in tabletop, and then I do extension. And notice that my wrists don't break. I'm reaching long through my fingertips. Several of these. And then the next, I have my hands face my body, and I do adduction. So this is adduction at the shoulder joint. And then I do circles. And I like to keep the carriage still as I open, just to practice that stability. And then you can go the other way and keep the carriage still on that part of the circle. So I open, and then when I bring my arms up, I keep the carriage still, and then it continues to move. And then the last one is triceps. You can bend your elbows and extend your elbows. The other thing here is you can drop your ankles into a lazy tabletop if you find that your quads start to act up or your abdominals don't have the strength to hold this long and you want to finish the series. So this is triceps. So my elbows are about an inch off of the carriage here. So that is arms supine. And next I'll show you arms seated. This is a wonderful little tool if you don't quite have 90 degrees in your hip flex or your hamstring flexibility. 90 degrees at the hip joint. So this can give your sits bones just a little bit of a boost. There's a couple settings. It's higher if you turn it the other way. And in the book, it shows arms sitting or arms seated with the legs extended and between the shoulder rests. I often like to do it with sitting cross-legged. So I'm going to demonstrate it that way. And you're going to want to start with just one red for this first one. Arms are slightly in front. And they pull behind, and I turn my head at the same time. Chest expansion. When I exhale and pull, I'm drawing my transverse abdominis in. Okay, so that's chest expansion. And then I scooch back a little bit so I have enough resistance for biceps. And you want to have your arms the same height as your shoulders here, and you want to keep your elbows up there as you curl in for biceps. Again, drawing the transverse abdominis in. And don't let your eyes get too fixed. Sometimes I like to make sure that I'm looking around, that I can do any of the eye practices that I want to be doing, so that I don't get rigid and I don't get fixed. There's a lot to concentrate on, but you want to keep a certain freedom in the way that you are in the space and in your body. So chest expansion, biceps. And then the third one is called rhomboids. Sometimes I like to make this one just a single blue spring, because it can be really intense to do with a red, but just play with it. And at this point I would switch how my legs are crossed, just to keep my body guessing. And then from here, you're going to find neutral. It's easy to sort of drop back or to be too far forward here. So really find your internal sense of neutral. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to find this place before you start. And then you just open the book. Careful that you don't bring your head forward thinking that that's going to be you going further in the exercise, because it's not. So that's rhomboids. And there's two more. So I turn around for these last two. And I'm going to take this out so you can see what it's like where I'm just sitting. And I'm going to go back to a red spring now for these ones. Arms are out to the sides. They never really go behind you in this one. They stay slightly in front. I'm slightly rounded, so I come forward and open. This is called hug a tree. And then I bring my elbows under and I extend up and nice and long. You might feel tempted to go here. I don't know if I have a problem with that. That might be fine. But it's officially, I think, here. I really feel a challenge in my abdominals here too. The straps are pulling me back. I'm drawing the abdominals in. I also feel it in my triceps. So this is salute. And then finally we have arms kneeling. So again, I'm starting with chest expansion. But I put my knees right up against the shoulder rests. And here. And actually, I feel like I'm starting here with my arms by my sides. I don't want to come further forward because they are going to be slack there. So if I don't want to reset my straps, I might come away a bit further, but the balance is more challenging. Another important thing about arms kneeling is that I'm really opening up through my hip joints. It's another way to be functionally longer in through this hip joint rather than being pulled this way if your hip joints are really tight. And you don't want to use your butt. You don't want to squeeze your butt. You just want to really open and maybe draw the abdominals in and up gently. Right. So remembering this nice little turn that we have for chest expansion. I love doing that wink. That's chest expansion. And I feel all kinds of balance checks going on in my body here. It's really challenging to be with these straps up like this. And that being said, when you turn around, you want to switch to a blue spring. So I'm holding both of these in one hand. I'm adding the blue spring first and then taking away the red. I'll show you why. It's really funny. So if I take away the red first and it's like, oh no, then I start to go, oh, I can't get back. You're going to do this whole thing and you get all, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. So you have to add the blue spring first, then take away the red, so you're anchored in. The other thing is that this blue spring is kind of light. And a lot of people, this is what happens. They go, whoa, 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 like that. That's pretty good, huh? I'll do it one more time, because I've seen people do this a lot. It's like, okay, I'm ready to go. Whoa! Yeah, that wasn't as good as the first one, but you get the picture. So I'm going to put my toes underneath, not underneath, but just they're touching the crack here between the shoulder rest and the carriage. It's kind of an anchor for my, kind of like where am I in space. You don't have to do that part. And then I slowly come up and I find that the open hip flexors without squeezing my butt too much. Arms slightly in front of me so they don't go behind you on these circles. And I inhale to go up. And then I exhale and the hands are in my periphery the whole time as I circle around. Inhale up. And exhale around. And then I reverse that after several of those. And I end up, and I have to flip the palms on this one. So as I come around and up, there's a little pause where I have to flip the palms before I roll down, or before I lower my arms down. And then finally, you can do hug a tree on this one, but mostly the circles will do it. Finally, my arms are now behind me. I'm stretching out the shoulder joints. I'm extending long through my hip joints, and I'm keeping the elbows back as I curl in from my biceps. I like to go for a red on this one. I didn't change the spring just now, but I think it's good to do red. I have a little more bicep strength here. And so that is arms kneeling. The last one I'm going to do is rowing back one. And I'm going to keep this single blue spring on for this. And this one's pretty advanced. I need to come forward so that more or less my knees or thighs are between the shoulder rests. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. You'll run out of reformer here. That's normal. So I'm here. I bend my elbows in. I tuck my tail, and the carriage is moving, the carriage is moving, the carriage is moving. I'm tucking, I'm tucking, I'm tucking. I roll back, so I'm in flexion here. And then I keep the carriage still as I internally rotate at the shoulder joints and bring my arms out to the sides. And then I curl, keeping the carriage still, keeping the carriage still, keeping the carriage still. Touch my fingers behind me. I try to make, touch middle finger to middle finger. And then I come up and through. So I'm here, tuck my tail, carriage is still, carriage is still, carriage is still. And I can also circle around and then unravel. I'm not so picky about that last part. It's just the stability of the carriage and being able to feel that light tension on the carriage so it's not moving as you internally rotate or medially rotate your shoulder joints, and pronate at the forearm. So those are all the arm series. Arm supine, not all of them. There's an arms kneeling side also, but we're not going to do that one. Arms seated, arms supine, and arms kneeling. Okay, so now I'm going to do the leg work, and you're probably not going to see my head for some of it, but you'll get why I'm framing it this way in a minute. I have one blue spring on. I'm going to do side split. So I'm going to take the foot ball down all the way. I'm going to put my foot on the stable wood surface, foot plate, and then I'm going to put my other foot eccentrically contract my inner thighs and let my legs move in. And then slowly close, coming into the stopper. I like to hold for a few seconds and then open, releasing. You see my head here, baby? Maybe not? Closing. And I like to really feel like both legs are moving and both legs are closing at the same time. So then we have skating, single leg skating. So much like scooter, I'm going to put my hands on my hips though, and I'm going to really bend and I drop into my deepest plie on this supporting leg. So my right ankle's relaxed, my right knee is right over my right ankle. And I put my left foot kind of on the inside of the reformer. And I press out. And then I bend it in. And then a neutral pelvis, neutral spine actually. I really feel this on both glutes. And then double leg skating is when you're right here in the center. Both knees are bent. This is not in the book, I don't think. It might be. And then I straighten both. And I stay in the center of the opening here, no matter where that opening is. My pelvis also doesn't get any higher. I just straighten my legs and it doesn't get higher because I'm pressing the carriage out. Can you see that? Can you see me? So that's single leg skating and then double leg skating. Those are two of the leg work exercises. So now I'm going to show you lateral flexion on the reformer. So I'm going to put the short box on, which means I just turn the box this way. And I'm going to start with tilt and twist. They're very simple. My feet are underneath this strap for some stability. I find neutral pelvis. I have my hands behind my head. And tilt is just a simple lateral flexion. Side to side. But then twist is I come back with a neutral spine. So notice that I don't drop back and turn. It's not like that. It's like this. Coming back. Coming back. And I'm really using my eyes here too. So I can look, and then I can take a breath here. And come back. So that's tilt and twist. And now I'm going to do something called side over. This is really challenging. I think that Rail has his legs straight in the book. It's harder to do it with your legs straight. I'm going to start with my leg bent. And so you can come over. And that will straighten my leg once I'm down. I'm actually have my elbow on the shoulder rest here, and I'm actually taking a rest down here and stretching it out for a minute. That's not officially in the exercise. Insider knowledge. Okay. And then I'm going to draw my abdominals in to find the support for my spine as I come up. And inhale. And exhale. And inhale. And exhale. Hello. Okay, that side over. And then finally, so we just did tilt, we did twist, that was side over, and now I'm going to do mermaid. Mermaid is just the most delicious thing. It's so awesome. So I'm going to take the box off. And then I'm going to put the foot bar up. And I'm going to just do one red spring. And I'm going to be in a Z-sit. Actually, I'm going to do blue spring because I want it to be even easier to slide the carriage. So I have my hands slightly in front of the middle here. It's not quite in the middle, and you certainly don't want it behind you because then this can more easily happen. And if it's a little bit in the front of center, you can swing your elbow down and forward a bit and have your weight a little bit more on the pinky. And so then I'm in the Z-sit, and I'm thinking about my left sit bone dropping down. Now, I do this a little differently than Rail. And in fact, if you look at the pictures of him in the book, he's not actually in lateral flexion. He's actually tilting his whole body, which is just sort of going sideways, which is different than actually laterally flexing the spine. So I love Rail. He's such an awesome guy, my teacher, so total respect to Rail. But I just want to point that piece out. It feels important. So I'm going to slide my elbow underneath me instead of being here, sliding it underneath and arcing over. I'm really thinking of letting my left sit bone drop down. And then back up. And I think he just twists right away. I like to do a few of these. And then I like to replace my right hand with my left hand. And then send my right hand over and just press it out to have a nice stretch here. And then sometimes I round it through. This feels a little bit like stretching your arms on the ballet bar. It's super nice. This is like, I'm making it up. This is totally not official Pilates, what's happening right here. But enjoy that if you wish. I'm going to do it facing the other way. I think this is a good one to see on both sides. And this is where it's so great that I have this little mic so that you can still hear me. So again, my hand is slightly in front of center. I swing my elbow under. I'm thinking of my right sit bone dropping down. I arc over. Take a breath. And I'm not going like this with my shoulder. I'm allowing the shoulder to drop down. And when I deepen into it, I could go more this way, or I could think of dropping my left sit bone even more. You can barely see that, but it's happening. And up. And over. Replacing. And I get to do this on the other side. Compress it all the way out. Oh, yes. Can kind of round in. If you have disc issues in your spine, be really careful with this because I'm flexing and twisting, but it's not really that loaded. I'm pretty supported, so it feels okay. But I can really feel the asymmetries in my spine here that I can really feel it's different on one side than the other. Maybe the case for you, it may not be, but give it a try and see. Okay, so back extension on the reformer. I'm going to do breaststroke prep. So I've got the long box on, and I have one red spring, and my chest is just off the edge here, and I press the carriage out a bit, and you might be able to see here that my elbows are nice and wide, and I'm lengthening through my tail, and I'm drawing my abdominals in rather than dropping into my lower back. I'm really trying to focus on my upper back more here when I go into extension. So first, I press this out, press the carriage out, and then pressing down and lifting my upper back a bit. And you can go up quite high here. I suggest you focus mostly on the upper back. Coming down and dropping it in. Pressing it out, lifting it up. Coming down and dropping it in. And then I'm going to switch here to a single blue spring, taking off the red, and I'm going to bring the foot bar down. And I'm going to do pulling straps 1 and pulling straps 2. So here I come back, got my chest just off the edge, and I'm holding the gray edges of the straps. So in pulling straps 1, I'm bringing the straps here. My wrists aren't here. And I actually come into a little bit of extension. And I come down. And I like to inhale on the way up. Pulling straps 2 is that you're out to the sides. And then at the end of pulling straps, or at the beginning, I like to bring the headrest all the way up so that I can rest my forehead on the headrest. And when you do this and you take deep breaths, it forces the air into the back of your rib cage, so I feel like it almost spreads out my back ribs. It's a wonderful recuperation. Releasing through my skull. Pulling straps 1 and 2. Okay, so there's one more really great back extension exercise that is not in the book. And it's called Superman. And I learned this from my teacher, Karen Clippinger, dance, science, and Pilates goddess, who retired recently from Cal State Long Beach. And she calls this Superman. My thumbs are facing outward, and I open and circle around and up and back. And I go into back extension there. You don't want to fall back. Spring. I just do one blue spring here because it's quite challenging to get your arms behind you. You want to open. You want to let your ribs open. You want to inhale. It's really wonderful. You got to try it. Not in the book. Total bonus. Thank you, Karen Clippinger.